Welcome to Simplify to Scale, a show dedicated to helping you scale a high impact and high profit business that you love without all of the complexity and chaos that can keep you trapped in the day-to-day. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and with decades of scaling experience, I know what actually works and what's just hype. So if you are done with all of the one-size-fits-all scaling advice and all of the overnight success promises, and instead you want proven practical strategies that will help you simplify operations, elevate your leadership, amplify profits, and scale sustainably, let's dive in and get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Simplify to Scale show. Today, we are kicking off something really special, and I am so excited for today's guest. So as we're looking forward to the new year, as we're looking forward to what it's going to take to really be successful this year, one of the things that I'm excited to share with you is some of the mentors and some of the people who I personally have been working with that I feel have had a really big impact on my own personal growth and my own success. And so today's guest is one of those incredibly special people to me. And I'm excited that you will get to meet her. And we're going to talk all about what it's really like to have success be about more than just external pressures and expectations, to have a business that feels fully in alignment, and to be able to really define for yourself what success looks like in this particular season of business or life. So today I am super excited for Natalie Cutforth to be joining me on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Krista. Our relationship has been such an evolutionary friendship, and business camaraderie is what I would call it.
Amazing. So for those who do not know you, can you give a little introduction? Who are you? How did you get to do what you do?
Well, my background's a little bit unique. I could go back as far as saying I grew up on a farm or ranch, and then I went into international business, and I spent 22 years working in a corporate environment, traveling every other week for work in technology sales, for C-level sales. But in the midst of that, I had a personal awakening, and I was about 28 when I started understanding that I had an ability to see things that not everybody saw. And I was trying to learn how to understand that and make peace with myself. So I started getting some training, and I found my mentor around that time in my life. So right now I'm a clairvoyant, shamanic reader and healer, and I mentor others. I've been doing that for the last 16 years. And some of those 16 years, were overlapped with my technology career, because I started doing that on the side before I left my corporate career.
So I'm super curious, as you realized that you had these gifts that other people don't have, and as you decided to make this transition from what was, it sounds like a more traditional corporate type career into your own business, how did you go about defining what success looked like, or even figuring out what you wanted that to be? How did you make that transition?
Well, I feel like being in sales for so long and having management making a decision about what success was measured like for me gave me the skill through lots of pressure from the outside to really define what it meant to me. Like, did I feel like I needed a Bentley? No, but my boss wanted me to have one. So I had to learn to have boundaries with those pressures and start defining, no, I just want a 3-week vacation in Bali. I don't want a Bentley, as my success measure, right? Because everybody has their value system. And so I think that started when I was working in corporate sales. And as I took that leap of being fully self-employed 10 years ago, I really knew that my intention was to be helping others in their journey, to be able to have freedom of choice around my time, like what hours I work, how much I work, and be able to make better choices for my health. Because, in my previous career, I was traveling so much, and it really, took its toll. And so I think that it was in some ways, it was a bit of a rejection of what I'd been through for 22 years and saying, no, I'm going to have it my way. But what was really most important, I think, is that I was aware that I needed to measure my success and not have someone else, an external source, define what that looked like for me. Because if I was responding to someone else's definition of success, I was never going to actually be waking up feeling good in my body, feeling fulfilled, feeling on my path. So I guess hopefully that's the answer you were asking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to dig a little deeper into what you said right at the end there about feeling fulfilled and feeling like you're on your path. Because so often I feel like all we hear is you need to do this and you have to do this and you have to use this tool and you have to follow this system and you have to use this strategy. And there's all of these different things that you have to do. And I'm very much saying that in air quotes. And so, how do you tune into what is actually right for you and yet still have a successful business?
Wow, that's a big one. I focus on how I feel in my mind, my body, and my spirit, right? I check in with that a lot when I'm making decisions. It's not just about letting my mind make the decision. I like to ask those four questions. Is this a yes for my mind? Is it a yes for my body? Is it a yes for my spirit? And is it a yes for my heart? And if like three of those are a yes and one of them's a no, I explore what the no is and why. Maybe it's just resistance I need to get over, or maybe that no, that one piece that's a no is telling me I actually need to do something different. And I use my psychic skills to do that. And the way I do that is I imagine a rose out in front of me. I visualize. So I'm a visualizer, but you don't have to be a visualizer. You can muscle test yourself. You can also just realize that when you're using energy tools, you're using your imagination. So it's just sort of like listening to an audiobook. You have ideas that come into your thoughts based on what you're thinking about. And I look to the rose and I ask it to show me what a yes is and what is a no. And sometimes it moves right or left. Sometimes it moves up or down or close to me or farther away. And I recheck it every single time that I'm asking that because it can change. And then I'm like, is this a yes or a no for each of those areas? And that's how I get to the information. I ask a lot of questions to get my psychic energy aligned because I think people assume that just because you're psychic, suddenly, bing, you have all the answers. But for me, it's a matter of asking the right questions, not just asking one question, but like looking at the whole of who you are.
Yeah, that's what I love so much about your approach and the way that you work is I do feel that it is very insightful and very deep. And I think the questioning, I know you prompt me a lot with some really, really great questions that like get me to pause and actually think in a way that I don't normally do. So I absolutely love that. And I'm curious also, kind of continuing on this theme with business, where do you think people end up kind of with external pressures that causes them to create a business that is not the right model for them?
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like it often causes people to be under a lot more stress than they need to be because they're trying to achieve some metric somebody else has defined for them, or they got this training and that training says this is what success looks like. And when we do that, we actually can pull ourselves off of alignment with our own soul path. You don't have to have a career like mine to be in alignment with your soul path. Everybody that does anything, any job on the planet has the possibility of being aligned with what their soul's here to do. It's really more about what we come in with as a soul contract with ourself. It's actually staying in alignment with those intentions. I've recently noticed that people can use the word lifestyle business as a little bit of a bad word, or like you're less relevant because you're doing it as a hobby if you're having a lifestyle business. But I really believe that, to me, it just means that we're building a business around what we want our life to look like. And it's okay if we don't have this idea that we're going to sell our business or leave it to a next generation, that we're just doing it to have the life we want. To me, that's a lifestyle business. And it's, to me, it's not, again, based on the measures someone else has created for you, but the measure you're creating for yourself in success.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know that so aligns with my rich, fulfilled life framework. To me, that's the whole purpose of what we're doing. But I think the key is your business should be as big as you want it to be. Your business should have as many people as you want it to have. And I
Mm-hmm.
do think that there is that very external pressure. Like, you're not scaling if you're not doing this. You're not successful or to be taken seriously if you're not doing this. And I love that you always do bring it back to that alignment, because at the end of the day, what's right for someone else, even if they do something similar, even if they're in a similar industry, is not necessarily what's right for you. And I think giving yourself permission to really fully own what you want and what feels in alignment for you sounds like a whole lot better way to go about business and achieve success
Mm-hmm.
than following someone else's pattern of what they're trying to tell you success needs to be.
It's so important, because I feel like we are sort of pushed to not prioritize ourselves if we want to have a successful career. And that's actually, we're the most important one. It's our lives, not in a narcissistic way, but in a way that is honoring of, this is a life that we create through our choices, and how we choose to respond to others' pressures can make a big difference about how much joy we have. So,
Yeah, it's interesting because I will say for myself, I am your classic kind of definition of high achiever, as I bet many of you listening are. And when I think about the pressures that I end up kind of succumbing to, if you will, ironically, are all self imposed. And I am the one who ends up telling everyone else how important it is to create space and to put themselves first and to make sure they're prioritizing self care and to do all these things. But left to my own devices, I will just work 24/7 because it fuels me, because I love it. And I've learned that I can't actually do that. And that I eventually hit a point where it's not successful. And so this has been a journey for me over my entire career and my entire business, is really creating space and really making time to prioritize me, not just my work. And that's a lot of the work that we do together, is you help me with that insightfulness and the questioning and really getting clear on some of kind of where I do need to focus on me and make time for me. And I know that it's been really challenging to do in a lot of ways because it goes against my natural wiring. Yet it is absolutely probably one of the most transformational things for me. And it's given me the space to process a lot that has happened in 2025 and that's continuing this year, and otherwise. So, can you talk a little bit about the work you do and just kind of how that all fits together?
well, I want to start by saying I can really relate, because I'm a very highly motivated overachiever, an Enneagram 3, perform, achieve, perform, achieve. And I grew up on a ranch, and I have parents that are still working in their late 70s because they like working, not because they have to. And so I totally relate to feeling that work is actually really something that fulfills me. And I can find myself working at times where, other people might be choosing to do something fun, but for me, it's fun. So I can relate to that. So fulfillment is yours to define, but it is also important to notice when we're putting too much pressure on ourselves, because I do the same. So thanks for saying that. When my intention with my mentoring work that we have done together the last 2 years, Krista, is that I would not make someone into me, but I would do like my mentor did and help me. She helped me discover new parts of myself that I could sense were there, but didn't know how to define. And so my focus in our time together in mentoring is, one, first to call in support, because there's a lot of professional women and successful women. We tend to expect ourselves to do it alone, or we might not have enough people at the level of thought process surrounding us that we can call on to help us in certain areas. And then from there, we go into clearing some space through some multi-generational pattern clearings. Often, what I believe is that there's something called spiritual genetic inheritance, meaning that we have in our DNA or on an energetic level inherited things from hundreds of years in the past that are limiting to us that we don't even realize are there. And so when we clear space, we make more possible for our lives. In that, we then go into, taking a deep dive in your relationship with money and energy, because money is just a measure of energy, and cleaning house a little bit around that for yourself as you work. There's always room for us to improve in that, I think, over and over again. And then we continue to better understand your six sensory gifts and your gifts as it relates to what your calling is in the world, whether you're in a professional corporate environment, whether you're doing healing work as a doctor or a massage therapist, whether you're, running a film studio or an airline. There's all these different ways that we can be of service and still call in our soul purpose and still be a conduit for being aligned with intuition and healing energy while we do all those things. So my intention is really to help you connect more with your creative self and activate your soul contract with yourself and be more clear so that you can make choices from a fulfilled place through our time together. So.
Yeah, and I will say that's really been incredibly helpful for me, and something you may have heard me mention on the podcast before, if you're a regular listener, is as you scale your business, right? In the early days, it's all about, what do I need to learn? What do I need to do? You're looking very much for strategies and for tools and for systems and for things of that nature. And well, your business always needs those things. There's never a point that you hit where you don't need those things. The further you get in business, the more I think it becomes an internal growth as opposed to these external things that you end up needing. And so whereas I used to have more business coaches that would tell me, and guide me on how to effectively do what I needed to do in my business, now I have an entirely different team of people who are helping me be the best version of me kind of better step into who I am and what my gifts are and be the best leader that I can be. And I think that throughout our journey, we very much shift the type of support that we need. And it's not that that support isn't always incredibly valuable, but it's that at a certain point in your business, it becomes the ceiling that you cannot break through until you do that work. And so that was a big part in my decision in working with you. And it's had a really, really, really big impact. And I didn't know at the time, of course, that I was going to lose my dad, or that my marriage was going to end, or that I was going to sell the home I've been in for 20 years and move across the country, or that any of the other things that had happened. But one of the things I reflected on so much at the end of the year is how well I handled all of that very majorly disruptive, major life-changing events, if you will, and how they actually, I think, strengthened me for the better instead of not. And I attribute so much of that to a lot of that deep inner work that I've been doing with you. So A, thank you for that. But B, is this just me, or do you find that as people do this sort of work, they move through some big things or feel better equipped to handle the big things when they come up?
Well, I completely honor what you've been able to do through your focus and commitment to yourself, Krista. And yes, I see this I would say the people that choose to mentor with me have that awareness generally coming in, that they're highly intuitive and they need to cultivate their own energy in order to continue to be successful in their life, in their happiness, in their relationships, and in their business. And so these processes that we go through really help shed some layers that sometimes get in the way of that because of the way we're conditioned in life. So yes, I would say that's a common theme, even if people are doing very different things in their life, managing like nasty divorces with children, or managing, trying to get the right team put together for a new business that they're starting. Their energy is reflected in their business. And I believe my energy is reflected in my business, and that is something we can't avoid, because energy is magnetic and it attracts a match. So if we're in doubt, it will attract things that will have us doubt. If we're in courage and confidence or clarity, it'll attract things that align with our clarity. So I'm just amazed at how well you've navigated all this, but I'm not surprised either, Krista, because you're very devoted to your work in the world and to navigating all of these changes with love.
Yeah, it's been it's been a wild ride. It has definitely been a wild ride, and at the time we're recording this, still in the middle of it. But that being said, I do think that recognizing that we need the space in our schedule to be able to work on ourselves is really, really, really critical. And that one was hard for me. Doing that was hard because I could take time and I could work on myself. And I'm like, I don't have anything to work on right earlier in my career. I'm like, I'd rather take that time and do this. Or I'd rather take this time and build this relationship for someone that I might have a partnership with. And so it was very goal oriented, very action oriented all the time. And so taking that commitment to say, no, 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 like none of that's going to matter or matter in the same way if you don't create the space for this type of work instead. That was a really huge shift for me. And depending on where you're at, for those of you listening, that might be something that as you look at this year, you need to make the decision to carve out the space to do some kind of work on yourself, whether it's this type of work that I do with Natalie or whether it's a different type of work, but something so you can grow again as both the leader of your business, but just as that person who, let's circle back to kind of the energy conversation, is going to be able to attract and call in what you actually want for this next chapter. So how does that work? Can we dive a little deeper into the whole energy aspect of business?
Ooh, yes. I love it. I love it. My experience is that when we are intentional about our energy, not just our to-do list, which, oh God, I love to-do lists, but when we're intentional about our energy as we're approaching it, it actually allows us to see different possibilities. It allows us to notice if our energy's off about something that we think we want or we know we want, so that we can adjust our energy and have a different outcome in what we're putting out into the world.
Absolutely. And it's so important. It's equally as important, if not more important, than the strategies and the systems and the things that you put in place. And this is coming from the person who helps you scale through the right strategies and the right systems and the right team. So make sure you're creating space for this sort of stuff in your business as you look to your plan for the year, as you look to where you want to focus your attention and your capacity in the year. And with that, Natalie, why don't you tell people a little bit about the work that you do and where they can find out all about you?
Oh, okay. Yes, I am. You can find me on my website, nataliecutforth.com. And I both work with people in one-on-one healing sessions where I do a reading using my clairvoyant shamanic tools and healing. So the way I see that is I'm looking at a person's soul's memories in relation to whatever's going on in their life and looking for what might be limiting that they either need to see or they need to update or they need to clear in order to have a different outcome. And I'm also doing the energy work on that with my shamanic background as we're doing the private session. I also do that in a small group setting once a month in my group readings and healings. And then for my mentoring work, I work one-on-one, predominantly with women that are in the professional realm, whatever their profession is, and have a high level of intuition and want to continue to evolve like we just discussed. And in that process, we work together for 10 months from March through December to provide support, unravel certain aspects that are less obvious than our typical like psychological therapy would go to, and open up new possibilities. So I do that in a, there's 3 years that a person can work with me in mentoring, but the first year is a really critical one. And I also like to offer free events periodically, so keep an eye out for that. I do that. You could look at nataliecutsforth.com/workshops for information on my free events where you can spend time experiencing something I have to offer, whether it's a shamanic journey or a little process on understanding your spiritual board of directors, or I like to also do solstice and equinox gatherings where we do a little reading about what's coming and healing for the group.
Yeah, I love your events. I always bring people with me to your events. The last one that you just did, I brought one of my clients with me. But it's we actually have an event, depending on when you're listening to this. If you happen to listen right when it comes out, make sure that you head to that URL, which you'll find down below in the show notes, and get registered, because I'm going to be a guest at one of Natalie's events coming up next week.
Yeah, we're going to have an embodied leadership conversation. And a few of my mentees are going to share their expertise.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. Okay, so there's a question I ask everybody, and I am so curious to hear what your answer is going to be. And that is, in your business, how do you scale smarter, not harder, and keep things lean?
Wow. Well, there's a lot of things to say on that topic, but I would say, to start with, the biggest one for me is that I work with my guides. I work with not just with my own brain, but I work with the spiritual team, which I call my spiritual board of directors. And specifically, I have certain guides that are there to help me with my business or my sales process or other elements of my work. And I actually have sort of like a executive subcommittee in a way because that I often call in when I'm making planning decisions, when I'm deciding what next to offer. And even when I'm promoting something, I'll have my guides help, just go out there and get the message out. Right. So to me, that's a way to scale smarter and not harder, because I'm calling on a team of helpful spirits that wants to help. I believe helpful spirits come when you ask, but they don't interrupt because you have free will. So they're not going to just interrupt and try to do something without you requesting it. So establishing those relationships and calling on them is a huge part of that for me.
Yeah, I love that. I remember when we first built my spiritual board of directors, it took me a little bit to get into the habit of actually leveraging it. But boy, is it a really great start to my day when I have my little morning routine where I do my inversion chair. And that's when I do my deep breathing. It's when I call in my spiritual board of directors. It's when I look at my day, and then I go and do my exercises and my routines and have my coffee and get started. But I really, really, really enjoy that. And it was not something I ever would have thought to do without your guidance.
Awesome. It is powerful, and it is a relationship. These guides are relationships. So we learn with time working with them, and often they surprise us. I find that, what I think they will provide or what I think they might want to help me with is actually very different, but what they have to offer helps me get outside of my limited thinking, and in often creates a really profound and different experience for me in terms of how I'm working.
Fantastic. All right. So let's leave the listeners with one final tip for the new year. So as they look forward and they're thinking about what success and scale look like for them, making sure that they are leading a business that feels aligned and they're not being distracted by so much noise in the market, of which there is an abundance of, what are some things that they can be thinking about or doing to really stay aligned with what's right for them and their soul path?
Well, the number one thing that I'd like to suggest is that as you're preparing yourself to do that, before you do it, take time to clean out your sixth chakra, which is your analytical and intuitive mind. because our sixth chakra can get really congested with people that want to know what we're thinking, people that don't have good boundaries, people that need stuff from us. They get in our head, even if we're not thinking about them. And that can create a lot of clutter and influence what we choose to be true for ourselves. So I like to do that by just imagining that there is something like a nice tropical breeze blowing through my third eye, through the front of my head and out the back, just taking everybody with it, taking all those little bits of stuff and taking the energy that's in the past or in the future with it, so that we're in present time and that we're claiming our truth before we make any of those decisions.
Amazing. Natalie, thank you so much for being here and sharing just a taste of the incredible magic that you bring into the world. And I highly, highly encourage you to join one of Natalie's events. Go check her out online. Again, those links are going to be down below in the show notes. I am just so incredibly grateful to you and your support and your insight and your guidance over these past couple years. Now, I think I've known you, about 2.5 years now, 3 years? And so I'm very fortunate that we got connected at that event in New York City, and the rest is history in the making here. So encourage all of you to check out Natalie's work as well.
Thank you, Krista. It's been an honor.
All right. I hope you got a lot of value out of this episode. I will see you again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Simplify to Scale. If you'd like to take things further, I invite you to join me for my Scale Smarter, Not Harder interactive workshop. Head to strategicopsinstitute.com/scale smarter to get registered. Not only will we dive into what might be keeping you trapped in the day-to-day, but you'll have the opportunity to ask me your questions live. If you got value out of today's episode, I'd love if you'd take a moment and rate and review the show so more businesses can learn to scale more simply and sustainably. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you again next week.